After the Second World War, a number of high-profile war crimes trials took place in which the perpetrators of the Holocaust were brought to justice. The most famous trial took place at Nuremberg, in which a number of the remaining members of Adolf Hitler's Nazi hierarchy faced a number of different charges. The most high-profile to face the judges were Hermann Goering and Rudolf Hess, but even today there are stories of former Nazis being brought in front of the courts. Recently in the news, there was an article about a 100-year-old former SS guard being placed on trial. He was allegedly complicit in executions by firing squads and also in using the gas chambers, and has been linked to the murders of 3,500 people. Today we look at the last Nazi war crimes trials, and remember to support our channel. Please make sure to subscribe. As time has gone on, more information has come to fruition about the crimes of those who were involved in the Holocaust. Although many of the witnesses to the crimes have sadly passed away, many interviews have taken place where stories of former prisoners were told. Over the decades, different people's names have emerged, and Germany itself faced criticism over the years for not deporting war criminals to face trial, and also not charging those who were involved in small ways at the concentration camps. It wasn't just those who organised the killings that were complicit, it was those guards, bookkeepers, cooks and other staff who treated people unfairly. These cases remain important, as it's important that the justice system continues to pursue punishments for these crimes. Even if those accused crimes are not convicted, it's important that the trials and accusations come to document the history of the Holocaust and to bring awareness. Many trials have taken place over the past few decades, over 60 years since the end of the Second World War. One of the most high-profile of these was Oskar Groning's. He was an SS junior squad leader at Auschwitz-Birkenau, who worked in the department that collected and stole property when prisoners arrived at the camp. He was in charge of helping turn valuable items over from the prisoners to the Germans, and he became known as the Bookkeeper of Auschwitz. He was transferred from Auschwitz to a combat unit and was later captured by the British. However, when he returned to Germany, he broke his silence about the Holocaust. He claimed in order to combat Holocaust denial, he wished to tell what he saw, and he told horrific accounts of what he had personally seen and been involved in. He was one of the only Germans willing to speak in public about his time as an SS soldier, and the interviews themselves were incredibly shocking. He told of how on his first day he saw children being executed in barbaric ways, and how prisoners were routinely sent to the gas chambers. Groning would also talk about how the Germans were trained to hate the Jews, and some of his words did have anti-Semitic undertones, showing he still harboured some of these feelings. Also, the words he said incriminated him about his war crimes, and then in September 2014, many of these words were used against him, as he was charged with being an accessory to the murder of around 300,000 people in his role confiscating property. It was claimed that he willfully helped the economics and finances of the Nazi Party by doing this, and a year later in July 2015, he was found guilty of facilitating mass murder and was sentenced to 4 years in prison. He never managed to serve his sentence, as further trials took place to determine if he was fit enough to serve out his sentence in prison. However, on the 12th of March 2018, at the age of 96, Oskar Groning died without spending any time in prison for his role at Auschwitz. Another man who worked at Auschwitz was Hubert Zafke, an SS sergeant who served as a medic and also a guard. Whilst he was at the camp, Anne Frank and her family arrived at Auschwitz before they were transported away, but it was Zafke's unit who were known for placing the poison Zyklon B crystals into the gas chambers. Around 6,000 Jews a day were being killed in gas chambers at Auschwitz, and it was Zafke himself who personally administered the poison, killing poor prisoners. The crystals would be dropped in when the prisoners had been locked in chambers, and he was charged with murdering around 3,600 prisoners at Birkenau, and also being supportive in the running of the extermination camp. He stated that he did serve at Auschwitz, but denied being present or even witnessing the murders. He knew that people were being murdered at Auschwitz, but said he turned a blind eye to it and never ever took part. Now, he was placed on trial and this took 2 years, and only 4 days took place in court. The trial was suspended as he was deemed too ill to face trial, having been diagnosed with dementia. As the disease progressed, it was said that the 96-year-old could not reasonably stand trial and coherently follow, and because of this the charges were dropped on the 12th of September 2017. Johann Rehbogen was also another SS man who went on trial in Germany in November 2018. He is accused of having worked and served as a guard at the Stutthof concentration camp from June 1942 to September 1944. Although he has not been linked to any specific crimes, it's been argued that as he was a guard, he must have been an accessory to the deaths of more than 60,000 people who were killed at Stutthof. He must have known about these deaths, and he did not deny working at the camp, but said he was unaware of any killings and denied being involved in them. Interestingly, as he was under 21 during his time inside the camp, he was tried as a juvenile for his crimes. Another man accused of being a guard at Stutthof was 93-year-old Bruno Dey, who was charged by Hamburg prosecutors. He was alleged to have been involved in 5,230 cases of murder over the 9 months he spent at the camp, being a guard inside of the watchtower. He admitted also to have seen people being taken to the gas chambers. He said, "What good would it have been for me to leave? They'd just found someone else. I felt bad for the people there. I didn't know why they were there. I knew they were Jews who had committed no crimes." He stated he enlisted in the SS as he had a heart problem that stopped him serving on the front lines. It was said that as an SS guard at Stutthof between August 1944 and April 1945, he supported the killing of Jewish prisoners and was a cog in the murder machine who had full knowledge of what he was doing. As mentioned, he was a minor at the time, but in 2020 he was convicted of being an accessory to murder and was given a 2-year suspended sentence. In his final statement, Bruno Dey said, "Today I want to apologise to all of the people who went through this hell," and his conviction did attract some criticism. Although he was brought to trial, many thought that the fact he received a suspended sentence and was allowed to leave the courtroom was a disgrace and an insult to those survivors of the Holocaust. Thinking about it, it's unlikely that a 93-year-old man would commit another crime that would send him to prison to serve out the rest of his sentence. It's believed that this sentence carried very little punishment. John Demjanjuk was a Ukrainian who was drafted into the Soviet Red Army, however was captured by the Germans and made a prisoner of war. In Germany he was sent to a camp where special training was given to POWs in order to make them camp guards, and he then worked at various different camps. He was tried after being identified as Ivan the Terrible, a man who worked in the death camp supplying the gas for the Nazis. However, there was reasonable doubt as to whether he was this specific person, and he was initially sentenced to death in Israel. However, this was overturned, and he then returned to the US where he had settled. However, the Americans eventually revoked his citizenship, and in Germany he was extradited to stand trial. He was accused of being an accessory to the murder of around 28,000 prisoners, each person killed at Sobibor, during the time he was alleged to have worked there. On the 12th of May 2011 he was sentenced to years in prison for this. In February 2021, an unnamed 100-year-old defendant was charged with assisting the murders of 3,500 people who died while he served as an SS guard at Sachsenhausen between January 1942 and February 1945. It was said it took a long time, which has not made things easier because we're dealing with such elderly defendants, but murder and accessory to murder have no statute of limitations. The court said that these charges also included the execution of Soviet prisoners by shooting, and this defendant was also tasked with administering Zyklon B, as well as shooting prisoners to death. It was said of these specific charges, most of the perpetrators from Sachsenhausen got off scot-free, but these charges are a late and important sign that such crimes will be brought to justice. On the 5th of February, also in 2021, a 95-year-old woman named Irmgard F., who worked at Stutthof, was indicted for assisting those responsible at the camp with the systematic killing of the Jewish prisoners, Polish partisans and Soviet prisoners of war in her role as a stenographer and secretary to the camp commandant between June 1943 and April 1945. At the time she was under 21 and she would be tried in a juvenile court if the case goes to trial. The decision to carry this forward could take years. The charges came after a 5-year-long investigation into her activities during the war, and she admitted to having known prisoners were murdered but denied knowledge of the gassings. The public prosecutor stated it's about the concrete responsibility she had in the daily functionings of the camp. It's fair to say that the majority of these women knew about the persecution of the Jews, and some of them knew about them being murdered. There have also been further trials in which defendants' identities have been kept secret and hidden, simply known as unnamed defendants. In September 2015, a 91-year-old woman was charged in being complicit in the murders of around 260,000 prisoners in her time as a telegraph operator at Auschwitz-Birkenau. This woman in particular served in an all-female SS unit. In October 2017, an unnamed 96-year-old man who worked as a guard at the Majdanek extermination camp was charged with murder and being an accessory to it. He served as a guard during his time in which 17,000 Jews were murdered, and he allegedly worked as a perimeter guard inside the guard towers. 2017 was a big year for the Nazi war crimes trials, as 9 new cases in December had been turned over for possible prosecution. This involved different defendants who worked at Buchenwald, Ravensbrück and Mauthausen, and the names of these have yet to be released, but every single defendant is over 90 years old. So today there are still Nazi war criminals being brought to justice for their role in the Holocaust. There will be a point sometime soon though, when the last Nazi war crimes trial will take place. Once again, thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.